Captain Lena Holt stood on the rocky precipice, staring out over the barren, windswept plains of the distant planet. Her boots crunched softly against the fine dust as she scanned the horizon. They had come to this uncharted world searching for answers, rumors of an ancient civilization, a relic of unimaginable power hidden beneath the surface. It had been nothing more than a whisper in the galactic archives, a tantalizing mystery buried in forgotten corners of the universe. But now, standing on the edge of discovery, Lena felt an unsettling twinge of anticipation, the kind of feeling that meant they were on the verge of something dangerous. Her crew of scientists, engineers, and explorers buzzed around her, excited, but unaware of the dark truths lurking just beneath the surface. They had been granted access to this unclaimed world by the Galactic Exploration Authority, the first humans to set foot here in centuries, maybe longer. And though it felt like the beginning of an unprecedented scientific breakthrough, Lena couldn't shake the sensation that they were not alone. Something was watching. "Captain, you need to see this." Lieutenant Marco's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her away from the vast emptiness of the planet's surface. Lena turned to find Marco, a young and eager officer, standing near the entrance to a large cavern that had been uncovered by their excavation team. The walls shimmered with an unnatural light, and as Lena stepped closer, she saw it, an enormous, intricately carved stone archway. The symbols etched into the surface seemed to pulse with a faint rhythmic hum, as though they were alive. She approached cautiously. "What is it?" We think it's some sort of gateway, Captain. Not just any structure. It's as if it's waiting for something, or someone." Marco's voice wavered slightly, betraying his unease. Lena's heart skipped a beat. The hum of the relic resonated deep within her bones, and something about it made her skin crawl. She reached out, her fingers brushing the ancient symbols. The moment her touch made contact, a shockwave of energy shot through the air, and the cavern trembled violently. A series of harsh, dissonant sounds echoed through the planet's surface, like the grinding of distant gears, sounding from deep within the ground. The hum intensified, turning into a pulsing thrum that reverberated through her chest. "What did you do?" Marco whispered, his voice full of dread. Before Lena could respond, the sky above them turned black, as though a curtain of darkness had descended upon the planet. The stars vanished, swallowed by a sudden, unnatural eclipse. On the far horizon, the unmistakable shapes of massive ships appeared, too large, too powerful to be human-made. "They found us," Lena muttered under her breath, her stomach sinking. She knew immediately. The pulse had triggered something far beyond their understanding. Without warning, a cold, mechanical voice boomed through their comms, its tone flat and final. "You have activated the signal. Humanity is now in violation of the Uranus Covenant. Prepare for extermination." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Uranus. The name was legendary, whispered about in every corner of the galaxy, the deadliest species known to humankind. Lena's pulse quickened as she locked eyes with Marco, the reality of their situation crashing down upon them. There was no negotiation, no escape. "We need to leave. Now," she ordered, her voice shaking but resolute. But as they turned to run, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and the planet itself seemed to come alive, rumbling in anger. The sound of an approaching fleet grew louder by the second. Humanity had just triggered a war, and the Uranus would not stop until they were all wiped out. Lena's heart pounded as she sprinted back toward the ship. The ground quaked beneath her boots, the rumbling vibrations only growing stronger. The dark sky above was now streaked with flashes of unnatural light, the once clear horizon filled with the menacing silhouettes of Uranus warships descending from the blackness. Each one was enormous, an intimidating testament to their technological superiority. The hum of the planet's surface grew louder, almost as if the world itself was resonating in response to their arrival. It felt like time was running out, like the entire galaxy was holding its breath, waiting for the hammer to fall. "Captain, we can't outrun them," Marco shouted, his voice desperate as he hurried to catch up. Lena turned her head toward the ship, now only a few hundred meters away. But it seemed impossible to reach it in time. "We don't have a choice," she barked back. Their ship, the Vanguard, had been built for exploration, not combat. It wasn't prepared to defend against a fleet of Uranus warships. It was a sitting target. But she had no other option. The comms were down. Earth Command had no idea they were in immediate danger. They were on their own. As they neared the ship, the ground beneath them shook once more, a deafening roar filling the air. The cavernous sky split open with a high-pitched whine, and from the darkness above, a single, cold voice cut through the static. "Humanity, you have trespassed into our territory. The Uranus Empire does not tolerate such offenses." Lena froze, her blood running cold. The voice was mechanical, emotionless, but there was an unmistakable malice in its tone. It didn't come through the comms. It wasn't from Earth. It was from the Uranus fleet. The voice continued, colder than ice. "Prepare to surrender or face annihilation. You have triggered a war that you will not survive." Lena's eyes went wide as the reality of what was happening slammed into her. The Uranus weren't just making a threat. They were sending a clear message. There was no room for negotiation. No second chances. The moment they activated the relic, humanity had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. They were at war. And the Uranus did not lose wars. "Captain, what do we do?" Marco's voice was filled with panic as he glanced over his shoulder at the descending fleet, their massive ships looming closer. Lena stood motionless, her mind racing, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. There had to be something they could do. "Think, Lena. Think." A new voice crackled through the comms, breaking through the chaos. It wasn't from the Uranus. It was a message from the Vanguard, received just moments before the comms went silent again. A transmission from Earth Command. "Captain Holt, we've intercepted a message from the Uranus Empire. Their fleet is approaching, and we are unable to offer immediate assistance. You are to prepare for evacuation." The message was abruptly cut off. Lena felt the pit in her stomach widen. Earth couldn't help them. Not in time. The Uranus would be there long before reinforcements arrived. "Captain," Marco whispered, his face pale. "We're not going to make it, are we?" Her mind raced with options, but none of them were good. The Uranus were fast, their ships capable of wiping out fleets with precision. Humanity wasn't ready. She wasn't ready. "Not without a fight," Lena whispered back, her voice firm with a resolve that she didn't entirely feel. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We're not surrendering." But before they could take another step, the sky above split open with a deafening roar. The lead Uranus ship fired, a massive energy beam that sliced through the air and struck the planet's surface with a catastrophic explosion. The ground trembled violently, and a shockwave sent Lena and her crew tumbling to the ground. The explosion wiped out a chunk of the landscape, throwing up plumes of dust and debris, and the Uranus ship didn't even flinch. Lena scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding. There was no warning, no chance to defend themselves. This was the Uranus way. "That was a warning shot," Marco gasped, his face etched with fear. "Then they won't have to warn us again," Lena muttered, her gaze locked on the approaching fleet. She had one chance to survive, and it was going to take everything. She had to make it work. Lena and her crew scrambled aboard the Vanguard, the air thick with panic and uncertainty. As the ship's ramp sealed shut, the hum of the engines roared to life, but the sound was drowned out by the distant thunder of Uranus warships drawing ever closer. The massive fleet, like a swarm of metallic behemoths, blotted out the stars above. The planet's surface trembled, as if it too was aware of the impending annihilation. Inside the Vanguard, the crew worked feverishly at their stations, trying to power up the ship's weapons and shields. But there was no time for any of it. The Uranus were too close, too overwhelming. A single glance at the display showed dozens of Uranus ships, each capable of erasing entire fleets. And Earth had no idea what was happening. The communication channels were down, and Earth Command had already cut off contact, no longer able to respond. Lena's palms were slick with sweat as she clutched the command console, her heart hammering in her chest. "Captain," Marco's voice broke through her thoughts, high-pitched with anxiety. "We're getting a transmission. It's from the Uranus." Lena's blood ran cold. She knew what was coming. The Uranus were going to make their demands clear, and they were going to make sure humanity understood just how hopeless the situation was. On the main screen, the cold, mechanical voice of the Uranus Emperor cut through the silence, sending a chill down Lena's spine. "Humanity, you have triggered a war you will not survive. Surrender immediately, or face total extinction. Your fate is sealed." Lena's jaw tightened. The threat was as expected, but the sheer finality in the Emperor's voice sent a wave of dread rippling through her. There was no room for negotiation, no appeal for mercy. The Uranus wanted nothing short of their total victory. But then came the twist. However, the voice continued, "You may still have use in this galaxy. We offer you a choice. You will assist us in retrieving the artifact you've uncovered, or your species will be wiped out, not just by our hands, but by all who follow us. This is your only chance. Choose wisely." The screen blinked off, leaving an eerie silence in the control room. The crew stared at each other, faces pale with fear, uncertainty, and disbelief. This wasn't just a battle. It was the beginning of something much darker. They weren't just fighting to survive. They were being used as pawns in a much larger, far more dangerous game. What do they mean by the artifact?" Marco whispered, his voice barely audible. Lena turned to face him, her stomach twisting in knots. "I don't know. But it's clear now that the relic isn't just a tool. It's a weapon or something more." The pieces were falling into place, but they were not the ones controlling the game. "Captain," Lieutenant Cade's voice was tense. "We've just received a data burst. The Uranus aren't just after the relic. They believe it's a key to unlocking the weapon that can destroy entire star systems. They want it, and they'll stop at nothing to get it." Lena's mind raced. If the Uranus found the full extent of the relic's power, they would possess something far worse than any weapon humanity had ever encountered. And they couldn't let that happen. "But if we don't cooperate," Marco began. Lena didn't need to finish the thought. Their survival depended on finding the answers buried within the relic, but in the wrong hands, it could mean the galaxy's end. The Uranus weren't offering them a choice. They were presenting an ultimatum. Help them unlock the relic's power, or perish. She clenched her fists, her mind whirling. There had to be another way. But right now, every option felt like a trap. Every path seemed to lead toward destruction. The Uranus had already shown their power, and Lena knew they would not hesitate to use it. Her thoughts were interrupted by the shrill alarm blaring from the control panel. The Uranus fleet was now within firing range. "Captain, they're locking onto our position," Cade said, his voice tinged with panic. Lena's eyes locked on the countdown ticking down on the screen. The Uranus were moments away from unleashing their full assault. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Lena shouted. She had no illusions of escaping this unscathed. Their only hope now was to buy time. They had to find the relic's true purpose, and fast. The crew scrambled, but Lena's mind was already racing ahead. How could they use the Uranus' obsession with the relic to their advantage? Was there a way to turn the tables? If they didn't, humanity would be wiped from existence. The Vanguard shuddered violently as a series of energy blasts from the Uranus fleet hammered its shields, the hum of the ship's failing defenses echoing throughout the vessel. Sparks flew from damaged terminals, and the crew scrambled, fighting to keep the ship from falling apart under the onslaught. Lena gripped the command chair, her knuckles white, eyes locked on the looming Uranus ships on the monitors. There was no time to waste. Every second was a second closer to their destruction. Shields at 40% and dropping. Cade shouted, his voice strained. "We can't keep this up much longer, Captain." Lena's gaze never wavered from the tactical display. The Uranus were relentless, their massive warships moving in unison, their every move calculating, cold. They were testing the Vanguard's limits, pushing them toward a breaking point. And every moment they survived, the closer they came to unlocking the secret of the relic, and what it might mean for their survival. "Captain, we need to make a decision. The Uranus are not going to stop," Marco urged, his voice tight with urgency. Lena's mind raced, heart pounding. The transmission they received from the Uranus had made their demands clear. Help them activate the relic, or face total annihilation. But the more Lena thought about it, the more she realized there was something deeper at play. The Uranus weren't just after the relic. They were after something far more dangerous, something they weren't telling them. "What do we know about the relic?" Lena asked, her voice low but commanding. Lieutenant Cade turned to her, his face drawn. "It's not just a key to a weapon. It's a power source, a supercharged energy conduit that could give the Uranus control over entire star systems. The technology is ancient, older than anything we've seen before. It could be more powerful than the Uranus even realize." Lena's stomach twisted with the weight of that revelation. The Uranus were hunting something that could change the entire balance of power in the galaxy, and humanity had stumbled onto it first. "We can't let them have it," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "If they control the relic, they'll become unstoppable." "We can't take it back, Captain," Marco said, his voice tinged with fear. "They're already here. They're not asking anymore. We need to make a deal. Or—" The warning klaxon sounded again, cutting off Marco's sentence as the Vanguard lurched beneath another massive energy strike. The view screen flashed, showing a Uranus warship moving into position for a final assault. But as the crew scrambled to prepare, Lena felt a strange pull deep within her chest. It was a faint hum, barely perceptible at first, coming from the ship's main console. It was coming from the relic. She felt it then, a chill that raced down her spine. The relic wasn't just a weapon. It was alive. "Captain," Cade yelled, panic creeping into his voice. "The Uranus are locking on. We need to move now." But Lena didn't hear him. The hum from the relic was louder now, vibrating through the ship's hull, filling her head with images, with thoughts not her own. A vision began to take form, one that left her breathless. The Uranus were not its first masters. There were others, far older, who had created the relic, who had used it to control the galaxy eons ago, and they had all vanished. But their power remained. And something, deep within the relic, was waiting. Lena's hand hovered over the ship's console as the pieces began to fall into place. The Uranus didn't just want to use the relic. They wanted to awaken it, to resurrect its long-dead creators and unleash their lost empire upon the universe. It was a weapon of domination, a tool of conquest beyond anything the galaxy had ever known. Her breath quickened, and for a brief, terrifying moment, she considered the possibility that the Uranus didn't even know what they were truly dealing with. But if they succeeded in activating it, if they awakened whatever slumbered inside, it could mean the end of the galaxy as they knew it. "Captain," Marco's voice broke through her thoughts, urgent. "We need to make a move. We can't outrun them." Lena snapped back to the present, her mind working at full speed. They were running out of time. But then she felt it, an answer, a direction forming from the chaos, from the visions she'd seen. The relic was trying to communicate, pulling her toward a decision. The Uranus thought they controlled it. But maybe, just maybe, the relic was offering her a way to control it first. If she could unlock its true power, they might have a chance to turn the tide. "Get us to the relic," she ordered, her voice steady with resolve. "We're going to use it, but not for them. For us." The Vanguard jolted violently as another wave of energy strikes slammed into its hull. Sparks cascaded down the walls, and the ship's lights flickered erratically, casting long shadows across the control room. Outside, The Uranus fleet loomed larger by the second, their ships like shadows swallowing the stars. The crew was running out of time. The final countdown had begun. Lena could feel the weight of it, pressing down on her chest, each second more suffocating than the last. "Captain, we're not going to make it unless we do something drastic." Cade's voice broke through the noise of alarms and static. "The Uranus are only moments away from firing again." Lena's mind raced. Her fingers hovered over the console as she tried to steady her breathing. She had seen the visions in her mind, felt the pull of the relic's power. She knew it was the key. It was the only chance they had, but the stakes were higher than she could have ever anticipated. If they succeeded in activating it, they might turn the tide against the Uranus. But if they failed, or if the relic was triggered the wrong way, they might doom the galaxy to destruction. "Prepare to set course for the relic's source," Lena ordered, her voice firm despite the chaos unfolding around her. "We're going to activate it ourselves." The crew hesitated, their faces a mix of disbelief and fear. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. But Lena had seen it. The relic was waiting for a master, and she would be damned if it was going to fall into the Uranus' hands. "Captain, you can't be serious," Marco said, his voice trembling. "We don't know what that thing can do. We don't even understand how it works." Lena met his gaze, her resolve unshakable. "And that's why we're going to make it work for us. We don't have a choice. We either take control or we die." The ship shuddered again, and Lena's hand slammed down on the comms. "Cade, get us as close to the relic's source as possible. We're going in." Without waiting for a response, Lena turned to Marco. "Gather the team. We're activating the relic now." A heavy silence hung in the room, the weight of her decision settling over them like a storm cloud. She could see the fear in their eyes, the uncertainty, but she knew there was no turning back now. If they didn't take this risk, the Uranus would kill them all, and probably every other human in the galaxy. As the Vanguard lurched into action, hurtling toward the coordinates that would bring them face to face with the relic, Lena felt the hum of power beneath her fingertips. The relic was close, pulsing, almost alive. She could feel its resonance, its ancient energy calling to her, tempting her to unlock its secrets. The ship rocked again as a massive blast from the Uranus fleet hit their rear shields. The warning alarms screamed louder, but Lena's focus never wavered. Every second counted. The relic was the key to survival, but she could sense that it was something more. Something that wasn't just waiting for them to use it, but for something else entirely. "Captain," Cade shouted, "we're almost there. Just a few more clicks." The tension in the control room was palpable. The ship's alarms blared louder, signaling that their shields were near collapse. The Uranus ships were closing in fast, their weapons charging up for a final strike. "Hold on," Lena shouted. She knew that activating the relic was their last chance. If they didn't get it right, they'd never make it out alive. Suddenly, the Vanguard lurched again, this time with a force that sent Lena crashing into the console. The world spun around her, but through the haze of disorientation, she heard Cade's voice, distant but urgent. "Captain, the Uranus are locking onto us. They're preparing for a direct hit." "Not today," Lena muttered, her heart pounding in her chest. She pulled herself up, grabbing the controls with a newfound resolve. The relic was close, closer than ever before. As the ship surged toward the epicenter of the relic's signal, Lena felt the power building around them. The very air seemed to vibrate with energy, the relic's hum growing louder in her ears. It was as if it was alive, calling to her. But at what cost? Lena took a deep breath, her fingers trembling as she activated the ship's final override. The interface flared to life, and the relic's pulse surged outward, flooding the ship with an intense, blinding light. For a moment, everything went still. The light from the relic flared, searing through the control room with an intensity that left no room for thought, only sensation. Time seemed to stretch, to slow, until it no longer felt like seconds were passing at all. Lena's heart pounded in her chest, each beat in sync with the overwhelming pulse that filled the air. The hum was no longer distant or faint. It was deafening, a sound that vibrated through her very bones. The ship was alive with the power of the relic, alive in ways that defied explanation. Then, suddenly, it stopped. The light blinked out as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only the silence that followed. For a long moment, nothing moved. No alarms blared. No voices filled the room. The crew sat frozen in their seats, as if caught in a moment of disbelief, waiting for the inevitable explosion. But it never came. Did it work? Marco's voice broke the stillness, barely above a whisper. He was looking at the console, at the data flowing across the screens. His voice trembled, unsure of what he was seeing. Lena's breath caught in her throat. The readings were beyond anything she could have predicted. Power levels were spiking, rising at an exponential rate, more energy than the Vanguard was designed to contain. Yet the ship wasn't falling apart. Instead, it was absorbing the power, feeding on it like a creature ravenous for sustenance. We've harnessed it, Cade murmured, his voice barely audible. It's responding to us. The relic, it's choosing us. Lena's mind whirled. She had expected some kind of backlash, some violent, uncontrollable surge. But this was different. They weren't just activating the relic. They were becoming one with it. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. The relic wasn't just a power source. It was a conduit to something much older, much more terrifying. Captain, Cade spoke again, but this time his voice had a note of panic. We've got incoming. The Uranus fleet is. Lena didn't need to hear the rest. Her hands moved instinctively to the controls, her mind now fully focused. The Uranus were coming. She could feel them closing in, the weight of their presence pressing down on her. But now, with the relic's power coursing through her ship, she had a choice. She could fight back, not just survive, but strike back with the kind of power she had only imagined in her wildest dreams. The decision was already made. Prepare for combat, she said, her voice calm but deadly serious. She looked at the displays as the energy readings soared higher, pushing the Vanguard to its limits. The relic was giving them what they needed, but the cost was starting to become clear. The strain on the ship was immense. The hull groaned, and the engines vibrated with unnatural force. But there was no turning back now. The Uranus had to be stopped. Lena clenched her fists. Weapons systems online. Target the Uranus fleet. Outside, the Uranus ships were drawing closer, their massive forms filling the sky. Each one was a warship, heavily armed, designed for destruction. They weren't just here to take the relic. They were here to end humanity's rebellion once and for all. But as the Vanguard powered up its weapons, something changed. The relic's energy wasn't just coursing through the ship. It was flowing through her. She could feel it. A deep, ancient power, far beyond anything she had ever felt. Her vision blurred, and her mind seemed to stretch beyond the confines of the ship, beyond the stars. Lena's hands moved over the controls almost without thought, her body acting on instinct. She saw the Uranus fleet, felt them, like they were part of her own mind. Their movements, their intentions, their very essence were laid bare before her. She could control them, if she wanted. The power was intoxicating, overwhelming, a rush like nothing she had ever known. But deep down, a small voice, a whisper, warned her. This wasn't just a weapon. It was corrupting her. Suddenly, the control room erupted in chaos. Marco screamed something, but Lena couldn't hear him over the pounding roar in her mind. The energy was calling to her, urging her to unleash everything. She felt the power of the relic coursing through her veins, flooding her thoughts, altering the very way she saw the universe. And the Uranus fleet, it was nothing. The ship's weapons powered up, the ancient energy that had long been dormant inside the relic merging with the Vanguard systems. The first blast fired before Lena even realized she had pulled the trigger. The shot ripped through the Uranus warship's shields like paper, cutting it in half with a blinding flash of energy. The room fell silent. Lena stared at the display in shock, her pulse racing. The Uranus ship had disintegrated in an instant. "Captain." Cade's voice was uncertain now, filled with awe. We did that. But Lena didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the shattered remains of the Uranus warship, the space where it had been mere seconds ago. It was clear now. The relic was more than just a weapon. It was an extension of her will, her power, and it had just given her the ability to reshape the battlefield with a single thought. But at what cost? The Uranus fleet was disintegrating in front of Lena's eyes. A single focused blast from the Vanguard's newly empowered weapons had obliterated an entire warship, one that had been nearly impervious to conventional weapons just moments before. The energy from the relic surged through her, intoxicating and overwhelming, blurring the line between captain and machine. She felt more powerful than she could have ever imagined, but she also felt something else, a cold, creeping darkness deep inside her mind. The ship shuddered again as another Uranus ship fired back, its massive cannons charging up. But this time, Lena didn't hesitate. Her hand moved instinctively to the controls, and before anyone could warn her, the ship's weapon systems responded in kind. The Uranus warship's shields flickered and vanished in an instant, and the second ship evaporated into a brilliant cloud of debris. But as the explosion rippled through the empty void of space, Lena's heart sank. It was too easy, and something about it felt wrong. "Captain, they're retreating," Cade said, his voice filled with disbelief. The tactical radar showed the Uranus fleet was scattering, their once precise formation now broken. They were running, fleeing into the black void. But it wasn't victory that filled Lena's chest. It was unease. The relic had given them power. Too much power. Lena felt a strange shift inside her, like a slow, relentless tide tugging at her very essence. The relic's pulse was deep within her, and she realized with a start that she could feel the fleet's every movement, every command. The relic was amplifying her senses, melding her with the ship, with the energy it had unlocked. It was giving her access to an impossible power, but it was also binding her to it, to the darkness it carried. "Captain," Marco said, his voice low and hesitant. "You've got to stop. This isn't you anymore." Lena didn't respond. The power felt right. It felt like a part of her now. And yet, in the back of her mind, a warning bell tolled softly, a voice telling her to stop before it was too late. But that voice was drowned out by the hunger, the power she now controlled. The Uranus were retreating. But for how long? They wouldn't forget what had just happened. They'd come back with more ships, more force. If Lena didn't finish this now, humanity would never have a chance to rest. The relic was demanding more from her, urging her to do more, to conquer. She could feel the alien influence pressing into her thoughts, pulling her further down a path of destruction. Her vision blurred for a moment, the edges of her perception warping, before she snapped back to focus. "Captain," Cade's voice again, strained. "We got incoming transmissions from the Uranus." "There." Lena didn't wait to hear the rest. With a single thought, the relic's power surged, and a massive rift in space opened before them, its dark core an unnatural, jagged tear in the fabric of reality. The Uranus fleet was directly in its path. If they tried to escape, they would be sucked into the rift's gravitational pull. The rift was growing wider by the second, and Lena could feel the ship being drawn toward it, pulled in by an unseen force. The crew was panicking now. "Captain, shut it down," Marco shouted. "You're not yourself. We can't do this. This is madness." But Lena barely heard him. The rift was opening wider, the Uranus ships caught in its inescapable pull. The relic was pushing her, forcing her to make a choice. She could end it now. The Uranus would be consumed by the rift, and they would have won, no matter the cost. As the rift tore through the stars, a chilling voice echoed in the back of her mind. It's not enough. Lena's hand hovered over the controls, her breath coming in sharp, jagged gasps. The voice was growing louder, more insistent, urging her to push further, to use the full force of the relic. In the distance, the remnants of the Uranus fleet were scattered, helpless in the face of the growing rift. But Lena knew, deep down, that there was something darker at work here. The relic wasn't just giving her power. It was feeding on her. She could feel the influence wrapping tighter around her mind, filling her thoughts with its malevolent whispers. The crew was watching, waiting for her decision. But Lena's eyes were fixed on the rift, her fingers trembling as they hovered over the final control. Was she going to use the relic to end the Uranus threat, or was she about to unleash something far more terrifying? The rift loomed before them, its edges jagged and alive, crackling with an otherworldly energy that tugged at the fabric of reality itself. The Uranus fleet was scattered, but Lena could feel the pressure mounting from the relic's power. Every moment stretched into infinity, her mind torn between the need to stop and the pull to push forward. The decision had never been clearer. She could use the rift to end the Uranus, to wipe them from the galaxy in an instant. But at what cost? The relic's voice, the force inside her, demanded it. It promised her victory, but victory for whom? Lena's hand hovered over the control panel, her fingers twitching with the promise of power. The ship was vibrating, the crew's anxious faces reflecting the same dread she felt deep within herself. Marco, Cade, and the others were watching her, waiting. They had seen what the relic could do, and they knew how far she had fallen. Captain, Marco's voice broke the silence, full of fear and pleading. You're not in control anymore. Please, you have to stop this. Lena's eyes locked on his, and for a moment, she saw the desperation in his expression. The same desperation that mirrored the fear clawing at her own chest. She had known Marco for years, fought beside him. He was family. And now, as the relic's influence consumed her, she realized he was the only thing tethering her to humanity, to the person she used to be. But the relic was calling. Its power surged again, pulling her deeper into the abyss. Without thinking, Lena slammed her hand down on the console, activating the full power of the rift. The ship's engines roared to life, and the space around them twisted, bending as if the very laws of nature were being rewritten. The Uranus fleet was helpless, drawn toward the rift like moths to a flame. And then the rift's pull intensified. The stars themselves seemed to be sucked into the void, their light snuffed out as the rift consumed them. It was no longer just a weapon. It was a force of nature, and Lena had become its avatar. Captain, Cade cried out, his voice tinged with panic. We're going to be pulled in too. We've lost all control. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, alarms blaring as systems began to fail one by one. The Vanguard was being drawn toward the rift, and the crew could do nothing but watch as Lena's face remained impassive, her eyes locked on the growing void. But then, something unexpected happened. The Uranus ships, once helpless, began to turn. Their engines flared to life, attempting to flee from the pull of the rift. It was too late for most, but there was one ship, the largest of the fleet, that was pulling away. It was moving against the rift's current, fighting for escape. Lena's heart skipped a beat as the relic pulsed again, sending a wave of power through her, urging her to strike. The Uranus warship was there. It was her chance to end this, destroy the last of their fleet. But as the Uranus ship tried to flee, Lena's grip on the controls faltered. A vision flashed before her eyes. Visions of the galaxy, of her crew, of the lives she had vowed to protect. She saw the faces of those she loved, the lives that depended on her. The relic's power surged again, but this time, Lena fought it. She pulled her hand back from the console, breaking the connection, just in time. The rift's pull lessened, and the ship lurched, breaking free of its grasp. For a brief, surreal moment, The stars outside seemed to stabilize. The Uranus fleet had been decimated, but the remaining warship was still fighting for its life. The crew was still alive, but Lena had no idea how long she could hold on. She could feel the remnants of the relic's influence tugging at her mind, wanting to break free. "Captain," Cade whispered, his voice trembling. What did you do?" Lena's breath was ragged. She could barely comprehend what had just happened. She had almost lost herself. She had almost destroyed everything. But in that last moment, something inside her had broken free. She had made the choice. She had stopped herself before it was too late. "I don't know," Lena whispered, her voice distant. "But I think we just unleashed something more dangerous than we ever imagined."